If I'm sitting the UCAT in 2026, 2027, or beyond, would I use Medify or MedEntry? It's an extremely difficult question, which will require a lot of nuance, but I hope to make this a detailed response so you can make a more informed decision at the end of the day. There's pros and cons both, and I've had past students have success with both, but here are some factors to consider going forward. Now, I think one reason why there is a perennial debate regarding whether Medify or MedEntry is better is because they're very similar. They both have plenty of practice questions with more than 20,000 on each. They both have plenty of full exams and mini mocks. They have reasonable analysis of their answer options. I tend to think sometimes that MedEntry has some, it's very, very rare, maybe one question in 100 or one question in 200, where it's a bit questionable. And you'll see that the most common response and the video response might differ to the answer, but that's quite a small thing. Um, Essentially, like very small number of like incorrect answers that are mislabeled. But it's pretty like it's pretty easy to tell which ones, and that's a very minor thing and exceptionally rare. But they also have, videos explaining everything, but I don't watch the videos and I think it's probably too time consuming to do that. So I'm not sure if that's an advantage. The cost is very similar as well. So the difference is mandatory, I think, and everything I say needs to be double checked, is a one-off fee of $350 for the essential package. They have more expensive packages, but I'll leave it to you to decide whether they are something that you think would be beneficial or maybe have a more detailed chat. So their essential package is $350, but that's a one-off fee, whereas Medify is billed weekly. Now there's different like fees you can pay. Like if you want it just for a month, you might have to pay like $35 a week. But the yearly weekly cost, sounds weird, is $7 a week. So if you get it for the 50 weeks in a year, it costs the exact same. It's almost like they are like competing against each other. I should also mention I'm not like associated or sponsored by any of these companies either. So everything I say is purely from my own experience and my students' experience. MedEntry do have the option of, upgrading to additional workshops and tutoring, but there's a cost to that. So you can always organize your workshops and tutoring like through Medify, like with Medify, just through a private tutor or a group company, which a lot of people do. In terms of the difficulty, I would say that they're both pretty similar to the questions you get on the actual UCAT. I I think the consensus is that MedEntry's VR is normally a bit more inference based and hence is more like the actual UCAT, whereas Medify tends to be a bit more directly stated. That being said, like that's what everyone says, but I'm not sure that makes a big difference. I also find that MedEntry you get a bigger spectrum, so their hard questions are probably too hard, and their easy questions are too easy. Whereas with Medify, it's a bit more like stable along the middle. That being said, I think some questions on Medify are way too hard as well. And with the way QR's gone this year, where people have been scoring so highly, maybe those back end MedEntry questions are a bit easier and a bit better. Um, Another thing is that MedEntry has a difference, I think, in the difficulty between their practice material and their mock material. But then some people will say the same thing about Medify. In terms of how my students have gone this year, to be honest, I did go through like all the top scores and it almost seems to alternate between Medify, MedEntry, Medify, MedEntry. So I don't think it actually matters. Some people use both as well. So when mapping out a plan, I think there's a few factors to consider. So if you're starting your prep in year 10 or year 11, let's say start of year 11, like there's at least 18 months before your prep, I would start on MedEntry purely from a fees point of view. Because let's say you're starting from the start of year 11, you can get the MedEntry and then use that for a year, let's say. And then with a Medify subscription, you can just have that as a subscription for the year 12 to add on. So you can use both if you need. If you want to stick with MedEntry the whole way through, like that's completely fine. But from a fees point of view, if you are like gonna use both, then it would make sense, I think, to start with MedEntry because it's a one-time fee and then move on to the subscription-based model next. If you've got like a year or less, then you basically should just pick one. I like personally, I set the UCAT 5 years ago. The one I used more comprehensively was Medify. I found it really good. Um, so like I would probably go with Medify if I had a year or less to go in my prep. That being said, I have used MedEntry before, and it is also a good service. So I think a lot of it depends on like what does your school recommend, as well, and then what like do you know like if you have friends working on things where you can get like the group discounts or share accounts, things like that. That's an option too for things like MedEntry. So it's a very complicated question to answer, which is why I always put it off. But to me, I'd say if you're starting your prep early and you're going to commit, using some combination of both is probably best. I would start on MedEntry and then see how you go. When you feel like you're running out of resources or full exams, or you want to experience what Medify is like, then you can switch over in year 12 or in the months preceding your UCAT. If you are starting on a shorter deadline, let's say 2 to 12 months, pick one of the services. You might think about the cost. They're pretty similar overall. And so I would generally just go for Medify if I had a year or less left in my practice. But it's worth also noting that if you were to ask the summary of like UCAT experts and tutors, I think they would go with MedEntry. That seems to be the more common response on the Facebook page. One thing I haven't addressed is which is more close to the actual exam. And to be honest, I think it's impossible to answer this because I've had students who've used both come out of the exam and tell me it was exactly like Medify, and someone else will say it was exactly like MedEntry. So it's very subjective, which makes it hard to trust, which means probably just trusting one person isn't as strong as just trusting the whole consensus who would shift the MedEntry way. Um, so I'm not sure if this video has really given you more clarity or more confusion. But if you want to chat about it further, please do leave a comment or organize a call. And if you're interested in UCAT preparation, the three pillars of prep are number one, how much do you practice? Number two, do you use one of these two services? And number three, do you have a tutor to help you with your coaching? I reckon almost everyone I know in med had all those three things checked off. And it's very, very hard to compete with everyone else if you don't have the drive to practice, a good question bank to practice on, and a mentor to teach you how to practice. I think those three things are essential. Check out the next video for more information about how to get in touch. Otherwise, please leave a comment and I'd be interested to see what everyone's thoughts are. Thanks, guys. If you're serious about getting a good score, putting in whether it be you have 1 month to go or 1 year to go, it's important with the UCAT to get yourself equipped with the best resource possible because you need to be in the top 5 to 10%. So the first thing you should do is click the link in the description. This will give you access to my inner circle where I provide exclusive resources. The first of these is free PDFs. I every week will send out a free PDF covering some of my best strategies in each section. And so these include things like question types and key factors that you can consider. Additionally, by clicking out the link in the description, we can have a free one-on-one call where I give you my approach to practicing the UCAT and give you some advice and some free mentorship on how you can do well with this test and what it's like once you're in med. Furthermore, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for this to be the biggest area of free UCAT resources available with videos, PDFs, and free calls. And so why not get your hands on these resources that have helped me and others get into med? Please do me a favor and share this with others if you found it helpful, and stay tuned for more videos on this channel. Thanks very much, guys. I'll see you next time.